Okay, ek gaan in Afrikaans begin, want ek moet oorslaan in Engels. So, ek wil net sê goeienaand almal, welkom. Baie dankie Tannie. Ek het Tannie gehoor. Baie dankie dat julle almal vanaand hier is. Obviously we have some English-speaking guests from around the world, in fact, I'll tell you now why. And so I've switched into English, baie jammer aan die Afrikaans sprekers, maar ek weet julle kan al die ander taal praat. So, hier gaan ek. Thank you very much for joining us today, ladies and gentlemen. This evening's already proven to be very exciting for every single one of us here. For various reasons, we certainly were excited about the prospect of having this event. And of course, an event like this is quite a rarity. In fact, this is the first one that we've had, so we weren't sure exactly what the turnout was going to be like. And it turns out pretty good. So thank you to everyone for being here today. I just want to check that everyone can hear me clearly. Is it a bit distorted? Did you guys hear that? There's a squeaky noise from there. Is the sound good? Is the sound good everywhere? Now's a good time. Is it not good? Is it a bit distorted? Is it a bit echoey? Okay. It might be my voice. I'm an actor. We are trying to speak as well. Right. So we had a flood. I'm going to ask our sound man to just check anything about this to make it special for you guys. But we had such a flood of response to this event, and I used the word flood. It's a Freudian slip for which side of the argument are. That's not. We had a flood of requests to be at this event today. Obviously, we couldn't accommodate everyone. It was such a thing that we actually thought of maybe using another venue, but that brought with it a whole host of other problems, so we decided against it. We did the organizers said, a good plan. So the next time, and yes, there will be a next time, we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to have it at the Cape Town Stadium. So, you've got to be ambitious in this business. Our physical numbers are, of course, limited, but fear not for those who can't be here tonight, friends, family, people around the world, because we will be making this available. We're recording it with those cameras back there. I'm actually blocking my class who's behind me. Quite an important person, but we'll see you in a moment. We can't see. And we'll be making this available on DVDs on YouTube as well. And we're also right now at this moment live streaming. Live stream. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. Thank you. Does that sound better for everyone? Lovely. So we're live streaming at the moment from this little iPhone over here. We hope it works well. And so we've got people from all over the world listening here. We've actually got exactly 3 people I counted on there just now. No, luckily it's a lot more than that. But we do have people from all over the world, so we welcome all of you. Welcome tonight. Thank you for logging in. And once again, great to have everyone here. Now, speaking of people from around the world, we have some folks who've traveled from afar to be here tonight. Especially Dr. Richard Howe, all the way from the States. Thank you, sir, for joining us tonight. Dr. Abel Pienaar from Pretoria, baie dankie. And then, of course, some of us came from Simonstown, so that's even further than everywhere else. Ladies and gents, tonight we're engaging in a dialogue. We call it a debate, but in fact it's a dialogue, and we're all here to talk about perhaps the most important question anyone can ask, something that everyone should be asking, and that is God a human invention or not? Does he really exist? It stands to reason that we all have different views, different answers for that, but there's one thing I can guarantee you that every single one of us agree on, one undeniable thing we all share here tonight, and that is that we are seeking the truth. So that joins us tonight, and we're all seeking to know. So I welcome every single one here, every person with every worldview. Tonight is about just learning more about what we're seeking. And we're so blessed this evening to have 2 individuals here, 3 actually, who've spent a great part of their lives hungrily studying the good reason behind their particular worldview, so that tonight we're privy to years of contemplation, years of study, all squeezed into a couple of hours. So gentlemen, to all of you, thank you so much for coming tonight and sharing with us tonight. We appreciate that. Just before we get started, a few formalities. I'll be quick about this because I know you're not here to see me tonight. We do have, for those of you who are still smoking, those who can't read what it says on the packet, no smoking inside, obviously. The smoking is outside. As you go out where you came in the venue, there's a staircase. Actually, the smoking is under the staircase. There are smoking signs there and ashtrays. And they've put it under the staircase for those of you who are wondering whether or not smoking is indeed something you should be doing in hiding. Yes, it is. So, for
for those of you who want to use the restrooms, out this door, straight as you walk out the door, just keep going straight, and you'll see on your right hand side there's a big red wall, and you walk into the red wall. Believe me, there's an opening, just keep walking, and that's where the restrooms are. Don't put your phones off, but please make sure they're on silent, so that when your phone rings, no one's bothered, because you don't want that to happen. Otherwise, you know, we know what can happen depending on what ringtone you've chosen. But what I want to say is we like you to use, I kissed a girl and I liked it, you know what I'm saying? I want you to please use Twitter, and whatever other social networking you have, because we'd like you to just viralize this event. Viralize it for us, please. Our Twitter handle is Ratio Christi, RATIOCHRISTIUS, Ratio Christi US, and you can use the hashtag Inventing God or Is God Real? Okay, that brings us to the end of the formalities. Let me introduce the three gentlemen behind me. Okay, Dr. Richard Howe is a writer and as well as a public speaker and debater. He's been in various speaker and debater in various churches, conferences, and university campuses on issues concerning Christian apologetics and philosophy. He is a professor emeritus of philosophy and apologetics at Southern Evangelical Seminary in Charlotte, North Carolina, where he still teaches part-time. Dr. Howe is the vice president of the International Society of Christian Apologetics. He has spoken and debated in churches and universities in the US and Canada, as well as in Europe and Africa, on issues relating to the defense of the Christian faith. Forgive me if I'm going very quickly. I'm trying not to take up too much time. Dr. Howe has a BA in Biblical Studies from Mississippi College, an MA in Philosophy from the University of Mississippi, and a PhD in Philosophy from the University of Arkansas. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Richard Howe. On this side, Dr. Abel Pienaar is a South African philosopher and agnostic. He studied psychology at the University of Potchefstroom and theology at the University of Pretoria. He has a PhD in philosophy of religion. He worked as a full-time Dutch Reformed minister in Pretoria for more than 12 years. When he resigned from the church in 2006, he went to France and studied and practiced Zen Buddhism. When he returned to South Africa, he started the Renaissance Spiritual Community in Pretoria. Dr. Pienaar is also the director of the Center for Contemporary Spirituality since 2009. Dr. Pienaar has written extensively on the interfaith dialogue and on everyday spirituality. He has since published 3 books. Thank you. Please welcome Dr. Pienaar. I'm going to move across so we can see McClatchy behind me. The director of Ravi Zacharias International Ministry South Africa. He studied biochemistry at the University of KZN, apologetics and theology at Wycliffe Hall, Oxford University, and now he lives in Cape Town with his wife and beautiful girls, one born just 2 weeks ago as he arrived in Cape Town. McClatchy is also a researcher, a writer, a public speaker, and a moderator, as you can see, because he's moderating here tonight. Last year he moderated a debate at BITS between Oxford mathematician Professor John Lennox and political analyst and speaker Eusebius McKaiser on the topic, God and morality, is there a connection? That's a mouthful, I apologize, but of course you've got to know who is talking to us tonight. So there they are. I'm going to hand over to McClatchy right now. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Niku, for that kind introduction. I'd like to extend and add to that just a warm welcome to you as well. It's really wonderful to have you join us for these few hours to come and just really think about some really important issues. I think that it is not by accident that we are on the university campus, where I think that part of the fabric of the institution is to take ideas and to take beliefs and subject them to intellectual scrutiny. Because as we know very well in this country, that ideas have consequences. And so tonight we'll be thinking big and we'll be listening hard. You know, it's really a privilege again to be joined in this dialogue by 2 very able, distinguished speakers and thinkers. And I think you will join me in appreciating them just for the hard work that they've put into this. For us, it's just about, you know, the event starts now, but for them, this event has been, on their calendar for months. And so we really appreciate you spending this evening with us and really helping us answer the question, God, human invention or not? Before I hand over to you to speak, as Nico said, I'm just here to moderate. I am sitting slightly to the right to be more patriotic, and I want to just explain very quickly just the format of tonight's dialogue, so that you can follow as we go along. This dialogue will be divided into roughly 5 parts. The first part will move into prepared questions. It will be 20 minutes. I've got 2 questions that we've sent through to each speaker. They'll have 5 minutes to answer each question. And then that will be followed by the second session of unprepared questions. We have 2 questions again, where they'll have 3 minutes each to answer, but then their conversation partner will have about 2 minutes to respond immediately after that. So it'll be really good interaction. And then we'll move to the third part of the discussion. Nico is being really weird right now. As you can see, I am the Black Madonna tonight, with the mic to fit the profile. The third aspect of our dialogue will be really a free engagement between our 2 speakers, just a conversation where they'll lead the discussion based on what foundation has been set by their answers to the questions that we would have posed in the 2 sessions before that. And then the fourth part of the discussion will be where you get to participate. We'll put out some mics, and please, then you'll ask your questions directed at either one of our speakers, but both of them will get an opportunity to respond to that question regardless of who the question is directed to. And then finally, we'll move to the final part of our dialogue that will be constituted by the closing, concluding remarks by both our speakers. So without further ado, let me please kickstart this. Dr. Howe, I will begin with the question. I will just repeat it for the sake of the audience, as well as those who are tuning in on the live stream. But the first question really that I would like to ask is this. Which of the following 2 statements, in your opinion, describes God the best, and for what reasons? A, God refers to a real transcendent being that exists independently of time, space, matter, energy, and irrespective of what people of any age might think about him. Or B, God refers to our human experience as thinking people of every age, try to make sense of the ever-growing knowledge of the world that they live in. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Finally, someone without an English accent. Well, I opt for A. God refers to a real transcendent being that exists independent of time, space, matter, energy, and irrespective of what people might think about him. Something that should be obvious, even at this stage of the dialogue, before you've even heard hardly anything from me and nothing from Abel, is that whether you believe that God exists or whether you're agnostic about this issue, you're still in danger of going bald. So, don't get your hopes up. Obviously, if there is a God, he's indifferent to that. Abel makes a comment in his book that I want to take as a launching pad into my comments, from his book, Hatsu Ua is Low, by a donkey. Which, by the way, this is what Americans love about coming to South Africa, because no matter how little money you have, you can always buy a donkey. He says this: it makes much more sense to think about God and the true world in a new way, to integrate the discoveries in science, evolution, philosophy, and theology, and to build on it. I would submit to you that, despite the fact that science has changed radically over the past 2.5 millennia, from Aristotle's cosmology through qualifications in the later Middle Ages, through Ptolemy in the early part of the ancient world, through Copernicus, through Galileo, to Einstein, or Newton, Einstein, Niels Bohr, Stephen Hawking. And despite the fact that theists have had certain convictions about the existence of God throughout that same amount of time, I would take a cue that indeed when the discoveries of science do corroborate what the theists have held for many millennia, that is, that when science shows evidence that there is a God, then I agree with Abel's comment about being able to appeal to science. And I would appeal to the principle of being able to understand a cause from seeing its effect. So if you see a guitar beautifully handmade, you can extrapolate certain qualities about the guitar maker as a wood maker. Perhaps you can extrapolate some things about the guitar owner as a musician. So I think there are things about the physical universe from which we can extrapolate as effect to the cause of there being a God. And I want to just concentrate on one thing, since my time is limited, and the corroborating evidence for this in quotations from authorities we can put off afterwards. But I want to suggest to you that science is increasingly coming to the consensus that the universe had a beginning a finite time ago. And so you can formulate an argument this way. The universe began to exist. Whatever begins to exist has a cause of its existence. Therefore, the universe has a cause of its existence. Now, the argument is formally valid, which means if the premises are true, then the conclusion follows necessarily. If the universe had a beginning, and if things that have beginning have causes, then the universe has a cause. I would submit to you there's at least 3 converging lines of scientific evidence that the universe began a finite time ago. They are the Big Bang Theory, which is not the television show, although I have to admit most of what I know about physics I did learn from Sheldon, so that's about it. So I can't confirm that it's right. Big Bang Theory, expanding universe, and the second law of thermodynamics. And what I just want to do is define each one of those quickly and give you their significance. The Big Bang Theory maintains that the universe began in a colossal explosion a finite time ago. The significance of that is, since the universe has not existed from eternity, but began absolutely time, space, and matter in the Big Bang, then the universe has not always existed and therefore began to exist. The second is the expanding universe. Scientists maintain that every object in the universe is moving away from every other object, such that even space itself is expanding, which makes me wonder why traffic was so bad this afternoon, and space was expanding. What's the significance? The universe could not have been expanding from eternity. Otherwise, it would be infinitely dispersed by now, which it is not. Therefore, the universe began to exist a finite time ago. The third one is the second law of thermodynamics. It's defined as all isolated systems will tend towards a state of maximum disorder or entropy. Or another way to say it is, in an isolated system, the amount of energy available to do work decreases and becomes uniform. Or this amounts to saying that the universe is, quote, running down. So the significance is, if the universe could not have been running down, or if the universe is eternal, it would have run down by now. It could not have been running down from all eternity. Therefore, it began to exist a finite time ago. What's happening? Okay, good. Thank you. I'm done. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Will you please join me in giving Dr. Howe? Thank you very much for your answer. Dr. Pienaar, I'll repeat the question as well for you. Which of the following 2 statements, in your opinion, describes God the best, and for what reasons? A, God refers to a real, transcendent being that exists independently of time, space, matter, energy, and irrespective of what people of any age might think about him. Or B, God refers to our human experience as thinking people of every age try to make sense of the ever-growing knowledge of the world in which they live in. Your 5 minutes.
Thank you. And for all of you coming out tonight, thank you for that. Well, for me, I don't think God as a being that exists independent of time, space, matter, energy, can in any way be proven. And in proven, I of course refer to the knowledge, as we should, the communicable, repeatable, testable result of a demonstration or an experience. But let me start by saying this. No science, it should be repeated, can also answer this question. No matter what scientific evidence is brought forward to explain the architecture of atoms, or the ways that neurons exchange chemical and electrical signals to create a sensation in our minds, or the manner in which a universe may have been born out of the quantum foam, science cannot disprove the existence of God, any more than a fish can disprove the existence of trees. But, likewise, no matter what gaps exist in current scientific knowledge, no matter what baffling good deeds people do, no matter what divine and spiritual feelings people have, theology or even philosophy cannot prove the existence of God either. It is like Immanuel Kant, also an agnostic, said, we could neither prove nor disprove God's existence because we have no reliable means of verification. We have no reliable means of verification. For me, the most persuasive evidence of God is, according to the great philosopher and psychologist William James, is it's not physical or objective or provable. It is the highly personal transcendent experience. Or in this case, as B puts it, God, as I understand the word, refers to my human experience as a thinking person. So this God of Richard, or any of the about 3,000 gods of man through the centuries, are at most created by us. Does that mean there is no God? We do not know. That is the only honest answer we can give. I do, however, have a certain number of reasons or arguments that seems to me stronger than the ones which make the opposite case. For example, I cannot help thinking that if such a God existed, he or she should be easier to perceive or feel. All you would need to do is open your eyes and your soul, and believe me, I keep trying to do this. I even studied theology and practiced it for many years. And no matter how wide I opened my heart and my eyes, what I saw and still see is the world, and what I love is life in all its beauty. So many believers go to great lengths to convince us that such a God does exist. Of course, there is a specific God. This is very kind of them. But it would be so much simpler and so much more effective if he or she just appeared to us. Just give us a clear, undeniable sign. Something even science would be unable to dismiss. Proof, evidence in the empirical sense. I therefore rather agree with someone like Bishop John Selby Spong when he says, I dismiss the supernatural external God of theism. Theism and God are not the same. Theism is but one human definition of God. Therefore, I am what you might call a spiritual agnostic. That is, I do not claim to know that God does not exist, but I do claim to the value of living a spiritual life. And the spiritual part, by no means do I mean supernatural. I'm referring to what the American philosopher Ken Wilber calls the direct experience of a living reality, disclosed in the heart and consciousness of individuals. Or as the atheist and neuroscientist Sam Harris eloquently puts it, spirituality does not tell you anything about the birth of the cosmos, but it does reveal how utterly transfigured the mind can be by full collision with the present moment. In other words, my spirituality and my spiritual experience, I mean what the Buddha called being awake. That means I do agree with B, especially the second part of it. As thinking people of every age try to make sense of the world we live in. And therefore, I am also quite certain of the statement, man is and always has been a maker of gods. This is how we humans, from the beginning, try to make sense of our world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll move directly immediately into our second question for you, Dr. Howe. As a philosopher, what would you say is a reasonable explanation for why there is something like the universe and everything in it rather than nothing?
The argument that I find myself attracted to historically goes by different names, derived from Thomas Aquinas, medieval philosopher. also called the contingency argument. It traffics in this distinction that I want to take a minute or two just to see if I can summarize it and see if I can apply it in 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes. The distinction has to do with the difference or distinction between a thing's essence and a thing's existence. An essence is what something is. Its existence is that it is. And we can think of things that have essences like human beings that also have existence. We can think of things that have essences like unicorns that don't have existence. Now, with that distinction in mind, consider yourself as a human being. You are a human by virtue of your essence. You are a being by virtue of your existence. Whatever is true of you, any fact that's true of you is true of you either because of your essence or not. For example, the fact that you have risibility as a human being, the fact that you can laugh, or the fact that you have reason as a human being are caused by your essence. That is, it's because you're a human you have these qualities of reason and risibility. But what about things that could be true of you that maybe might not be true of you? For example, why are you here at Stellenbosch University tonight? Are you here because of your human nature? Is the reason you're here because of your essence as a human? I would suggest no. So you ask yourself the question, well, if being at Stellenbosch University doesn't arise out of my essence, then how is it that I am here? And I think the answer is pretty clearly, well, because I caused myself to be here. I chose to come to this venue tonight. With that in mind, then, consider your own existence. Do you exist by virtue of being a human? I would submit to you, no, because we know of human essences that don't exist, like Aragorn or Sherlock Holmes. They have the essence of a human, but they don't have existence. So if you don't exist by virtue, how much time do I have? 2. Because you scared me when you jumped on me. If you don't exist by virtue of your essence, then how do you explain your existence? Well, you obviously don't cause yourself to exist. Otherwise, you would have to exist before you exist, which doesn't make sense. So you must be caused to exist by something else outside of you. But what caused that thing's existence? It either exists by virtue of its essence or not. If it's not, then it must be caused by something outside of it. And you can keep going. I would submit to you, you can't go to infinity. So therefore, and we can get into the reasons why you can't go to infinity during the Q&A. Therefore, I submit, there must be something that exists by its very essence. It exists because it just is existence. And it not only is existence, but it gives existence or being to all other beings. And as Thomas Aquinas laconically commented, all men know this to be God. And Moses said in Exodus 3:13, when he asked, well, gee, you're going to send me to the nation of Israel, and they're going to ask me, who sent me? Who do I say? And God said, here's what you say to them. You tell them, I am has sent you. I am. And I submit to you that that is a nascent concept of what the philosophers go on to unpack. That God is the self-existent one who exists by his very nature and gives existence to everything else that doesn't exist by his very nature. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Pienaar, to repeat the question. As a philosopher, what would you say is the reasonable explanation for why something like our universe and everything in it exists rather than nothing? You have 5 minutes.
A friend of mine recently said to me, I can't be an atheist. I can't believe there's nothing. I believe there's something, at least an energy. And I said, no kidding. I do believe there's something, an energy. This indeed is exactly what physicists teach us. Being is energy. But to believe in God is not to believe in an energy. It is to believe in a will or a person. It is not to believe in something, it's to believe in someone. And that will, that someone, for you here, most of you here, the God of Abraham and Jacob, the God who became flesh in Jesus, for others, God of Muhammad or Krishna or whatever, is what I personally do not believe in. That there's something is open to no doubt. There's something. And this something, of course, it's a force of some kind. What the Greeks called energeia, what Spinoza called conatus, what modern physics calls energy, it is self-evident to anybody capable of observing nature. There is something. The question is not whether, but why there's something. Why nature? Why energy? Why being? Why becoming? This, of course, was the German philosopher Leibniz's great question. Why is there something rather than nothing? This is a question that goes beyond the theistic God, since it includes him or her. Why is there God rather than nothing? The question of being is elemental and recurs constantly through history. Yet, no one can answer it. And to say that being is eternal is not to explain it. And to think of being as necessary for something to exist is also not to explain it. It is merely to say that it can be explained only by itself. We've just heard that. It is its own cause, as the philosopher often puts it, which makes it forever incomprehensible to us. Philosophers are as much at the mercy of this mystery as physicists and theologians. Why the Big Bang rather than nothing? Why God rather than nothing? Why everything rather than nothing? The question, why is there something rather than nothing, is in essence unanswerable. But that makes it all the more fascinating, enlightening, stimulating, because it confronts us with the mystery of being, which can't be separated from its self-evidence. It startles us out of our positivistic sleep. It upsets our habits, our certainties, and our so-called facts. Of course, it proves nothing about the so-called God or Creator. And as the philosopher Voltaire once said, non le quoi, it's not clear. A term that was applied during the Roman Republic to a legal verdict of not proven, because it can't be proven. This something could equally be Anaximander Apeiron, the infinite, the undetermined, or Heraclitus' ever-changing fire, the becoming, or Parmenides' impersonal being, or Lao Tzu's equally impersonal Tao, or the quantum physics foam, or the new theory in quantum physics. It's not a big bang, it's a big crunch. It could have come out of nothingness. Because we don't understand nothingness yet, doesn't mean it couldn't have been. It could be a natural reason, really. It could have been caused by Spinoza, what Spinoza called substance, namely that which is its own cause and the cause of everything else, which is also absolutely necessary, eternal and infinite, but immanent, whose effects are within itself. And another possibility, and the one favored by most physicists today, the universe is one of a zillion of different universes with a huge range of parameters, including many different values for the strength of the nuclear force and the density of dark energy. 30 seconds. Maybe it's Hinduism, it's pantheism, or even panentheism. God is everything and also more than everything. Who can say for certain? There's no validating proof of any of this, and you will hear no proof tonight. But let's stop with the question. How come we try to explain something natural which we do not understand, the universe, life, human consciousness, by something we understand even less, the so-called supernatural God?
Thank you very much, Dr. Pienaar. Very engaging first part of the dialogue. Now we move on to our second part, where we've prepared some questions for you based on just your interactions with some of your work. I think I'll start with you again, Dr. Pienaar, on some of the things that you've said. You allude in your writings to the idea that there are many factors that play a role in the formation of a person's value system, the formation of their values. And so my question is, assuming that humans have these desires for morality, for religious worship, and justice for crimes, where and how would you argue these desires originate from? I'll give you 3 minutes to answer, and I'll give you 2 minutes, Dr. Howe, to maybe interact with that response. But then I'll give you your own 3 minutes to answer the very same question, and I'll give Dr. Pienaar 2 minutes to respond to your answer. Your 3 minutes, Dr. Pienaar.
Morality. About 6 million years ago, the tailless apes, the chimpanzee, and I think you pronounce it albonos, is the closest to our what's forefathers, ancestors. Yeah. The rest of the family of the Homo sapiens died out, so we've got them to refer back to. And what we've seen with them is they've got morality. They got group hierarchy. They punish each other if they do wrong. They even care for each other. They've even proved now that they can remember who owes them anything when they did something bad or good. And the earliest we can go back to where language started, because language is a preposition for religion. Without language, you can't have religion, because you have to convert, you have to give each other your ideas and talk about abstract ideas and give each other a sense of there's something bigger, and what is your sense and what is mine. So without language, you don't have religion. And let's say 15,000 years ago, we know that our forefathers came from Africa, started the big trek, and then we know language started. So then only we can say, okay, now we can conclude that out of that language barrier that's been crossed, now the religion came forward. But already now, 6 million years ago, we've got the apes, the chimpanzee and the abono. They already, we could see morality with them. So morality exists religion. So it's a built-in thing. Morality is for me not something religion brings and religion teaches. It's a good vehicle for that. But it's already there. It's already inside us. We know what's wrong and right. Confucius, and already he lived a long time before Jesus, had the golden rule: do unto others good things so that they can do it unto you. Jesus took that over. Religions took that over. The golden rule is in all religions. So, but it didn't start with 20 seconds. So in that sense, let's conclude. I say morality is a built-in thing. It's part of being human, and through language and religion, we explored it and fine-tuned it.
Thank you very much. Dr. Howe, do you agree with that response? Disagree? Give us your thoughts, and I'll phrase the question back to you so that you can give us your account, and you'll have 3 minutes. We're looking for just an interaction with the response.
Actually, I do agree. There is a very important sense in which morality is something that is distinct from religion. And I know a lot of Christians think that we're obligated as Christians to insist that without God, we can't have morality. I'm actually giving a paper at a philosophy conference in November, and the provocative title is, Does Morality Need God to be Objective? And my subtitle, which is the provocative part, is the yes and no answer of St. Thomas Aquinas. Because I've tried to re-inject in at least some evangelical American Christianity a robust understanding of morality that is our national heritage as Americans, and I would submit as our heritage as Westerners, and that is the concept of natural law theory. So maybe that would segue into how I would answer this question about morality.
Feel free to move to that.
Okay.
Yeah, morality designed for religious worship.
I think it's important to situate the question in a broader context, because morality, the word that's not being spoken that we generally think attends to the concept of morality is the idea of good. And I would submit to you that moral good is a subset of good. Because we use the word good like, hey, that was a pretty good bride we had this past weekend. Hey, that's a good knife you've got there in your sheath, and these kind of things. We use the word good, and I would submit to you what we are meaning by the word good, most broadly speaking, is when a thing actualizes its potencies and potentialities and perfections in accordance with the kind of thing that it is. So a good knife is a knife that has a sharp blade. Well, who are you to say that a knife has to have a sharp blade? I'm not saying a knife has to have a sharp blade. I'm saying that's what a knife is. If it's got a dull blade, it's just a bad knife. Well, who are you to say that pizza is supposed to taste a certain way? I'm just saying, if it doesn't taste like pizza is supposed to taste, it's not a, quote, good pizza. And I think we can extrapolate from that when we talk about a good human being. As Aristotle would argue in his Nicomachean Ethics, that a good human being is a creature, is a being that exemplifies perfections in accordance with what human nature dictates. And we learn from Aristotle and subsequent Western history that these are what we now collectively refer to as the virtues of fidelity and honesty and courage and love and these kind of things. Where the moral part, I think, comes in is when we exercise our free will, because we, I think, are unique among creatures on earth, that we actually have the capacity, unlike a chimpanzee, to choose against our natures. And I would submit to you that God has directed us and has commanded us to conduct ourselves in such a way that we actualize those perfections of our human nature that He has given us as our Creator. And when we don't do that, we are being, quote, immoral. So I see morality as a subset of a broader concept of good, understood, ultimately grounded in a thing's nature.
Thank you very much for your response. Dr. Pienaar, your thoughts on that response?
My problem lies with when Richard says something like, God gives this command or ask this of us, and then we go against our own nature. Where's the proof in that? Where do we find that? How can he come and tell me, okay, did you see that amazing thing that person did, that mother? She threw herself in front of the car to save a child. I can actually say that's quite natural. Morality is a natural expression of being human. It's part of our, let's say, DNA. It's not a God-given... and in any case, if I did something good or selfless because God told me and I'm hoping for a reward or trying to get free of a punishment, that's not a good way of doing stuff. If an atheist, and I've got a few atheist friends, tell me that they know they must do this. This is the right thing to do. From where does it come? Because they don't believe God commanded that. They just do it. They know it's the reasonable thing to do. It is supposed to be done, and they do it. And I know a lot of people. If you look at the world over where there's need, mostly it's not the religious people first there helping. It is people that most of the time don't believe. It is the Greenpeace people. It's people that they've got different reasons for it. They are motivated by selfless love, nothing to do with religion. Most of the time, it's nothing to do with religion.
Thank you for that. I do want to just bring it a little bit to, I'm sure we'll continue with this in the free engage, the third section, but I do want to ask you each one more question. Something just a little bit more practical. Maybe I'll start with you, Dr. Howe. You know, sort of imagine you are in an elevator. The reason I put it that way is because the questions I'm about to ask, I understand the answers can be nuanced much better and extended. But a simple conversation, something that Dr. Pienaar brought out, and somebody's asking you this question, where we see a lot of people complain that they can't experience God with their senses. And so the question is, why is it reasonable or rational to believe in a supernatural being such as God as you do, that we cannot see, hear, touch, taste, or smell. Another way to say, why isn't God more empirically more obvious?
Two things that I would say. First of all, there are things, just by analogy, there are things in the natural realm, even irrespective of whether those are supernatural. There are things that are the object of scientific study that we can't see, hear, taste, touch, or smell. They are posited as explanatory hypotheses for effects that we do see, hear, taste, touch, or smell. So we can extrapolate from the energy signature in the cloud chamber some type of trajectory that the particle follows when they're collided together, and we posit as an explanatory hypothesis the strong or weak nuclear force. We don't see, hear, taste, touch, or smell the strong or weak nuclear force, but it's posited as an explanation for something that we do see, in this case, the energy signature. So by analogy, I think that, as I started out my first 5 minutes, that we can reason from effect to cause. And we see certain things about the world that I think cannot be fully accounted for from within the world itself, which we may be able to explore some of the particulars of those. So that's the first thing, and that could be nuances as you suggested. The other thing I would say in the elevator, because the doors are shut, people can't get away. But I don't want to take the discussion into a sort of a parallel topic. But I have to say this as a Christian, is I will say, well, but I do think God has manifested himself bodily. And so that's what I would argue is what happened in Jesus of Nazareth, at least, irrespective of whether we could argue that he may have done it in other figures, for example, and that he has blue eyes. And well, that might be, we can have that conversation, but I would argue at least he's done it there. So in some sense, he is somebody that you can see, hear, taste, touch, or smell. Thank you.
And if you were in the elevator receiving that.
If I were with Richard, I would say,
Push all the buttons.
let me out of here. I'm glad that he can see, touch, smell God. But let me start with the easier part. God, by definition, surpasses us. Religion do not. They are human. They are the part we see. And they are much too human. Now, all the major religions on this earth contradict each other. They can not be all correct if they say this is God, this is how God looks, this is how God tastes, smells, whatever. They can't be all correct because they differ from each other. For some, it's a black God, for some, it's a blue God, for some, it's a woman, for some, it's a lot of gods with a lot of arms. So I've got a problem here. The people that say they know God, all I can see is, I can see religion. I can see people believe in it. Sometimes people tell me the devil is bad and he's busy. I don't see the devil, I only see people doing bad stuff. The existence of God is open to question. The existence of religion is not. Tonight, the example Richard gives no proof of God. That's why we are here. Is God, do we know he exists or not? I say we can't know, he says we can know. So, okay, where's the proof? Because our method we work with, the best one we've got as human beings, are the scientific method. I don't say it's perfect, but that's what we've got. Otherwise, we can believe anything. I can say I believe in the Kokoloshi. It's an African myth type of thing. And nobody can say it's not true. I believe it. So my problem is I see religion and I see that people need to believe. They want to believe. But I see no proof. I see no existential God. If I did, I would change my opinion.
You've got to be careful what you say about the Stellenbosch. Thank you for your response. Now, many theists, Christians, would define God, and I think Dr. Howe falls in this category, as indicated by his previous responses, in such a way that it might be Thank you so much. Yes, so many theists, Christians, define God in such a way where that God is in the center of existence, and such that life flows from God, and purpose flows from that. And so, with your definition, I'd like to ask, what would you say is the purpose of life? Again, I understand the question is huge, but elevator conversation. It's his turn to press the buttons. Your response in 3 minutes, please.
The purpose of life. That's a big one. I've struggled with that a lot, and that's why after a few years of studying theology, being a Dutch Reformed minister for a while, where I preach to people and say, this is the purpose of life, God is telling us to do this, and the ultimate is to end up in heaven one day. I came to the conclusion that there is no heaven and there is no hell. Heaven and hell is now. We are living there already. So if you want to know what is the purpose of life, I like what Zen is teaching. Zen is you take Buddhism and you take Taoism and you combine them and you get Zen Buddhism. Zen says, when you peel the potatoes, don't think about God, just peel the potatoes. In that, I've discovered living in the now, being awake, being mindful, being a good person, living profoundly, simply, and deeply. That's the purpose of life. Through that, a lot of stuff flows, because life and being is energy. And in that sense, I do believe you don't die. Because you can't stop energy. Energy doesn't die, it changes form, it keeps on going. The recycling of life, we come from the stars and we'll return to the stars, all that stuff. But the purpose of life is to live profoundly and deeply now. And God has nothing to do with that for me. There's no impact. If there's a God, great. I think you would like it. If there's not a God, doesn't matter. Trying to be good and decent and live in such a way that I enrich the people around me. Live in love. And I know all the great teachers before me said that. We have to love and respect.
Thank you. And I will pose the question now over to Nico. Nico, your response, Dr. Howe, to
Thank you. Well, I appreciate the question because it actually dovetails from comments I was making earlier about the concept of morality and understanding nature, because I take a cue from Aristotle, whose philosophy I greatly admire, that he understood that natural objects, that is, objects that we see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, by and large, and living objects, by and large, have what Aristotle calls a telos. That is, it has a goal directedness. It has an end game. An acorn becomes an oak tree. It doesn't sometimes decide to become a whale or a caterpillar or something. There's something inherent metaphysically, according to Aristotle, in an acorn that directs it towards its destiny, which in this case is an oak tree. And so Thomas Aquinas takes the philosophy of Aristotle, baptizes it, sanctifies it, dresses it up a little bit, makes it compatible with his Christian faith as he understands it, and says, I think that's true of human beings. Human beings have some type of goal-directedness towards which we are aimed. But that goal-directedness in Aquinas' mind was more than, as with the acorn, it becomes a mature oak tree, so a zygote becomes an adult human being. But that we have some destiny that's beyond that because we've been made by a transcendent God. And so I would, in summary, say that the purpose of life is for us to enjoy and know God. That is why we were made, and that is our telos. The difference, however, I think, between us as living creatures and even other animals is that we have this freedom of the will that allows us to decide whether we do or don't want that love. Forced love is rape. So God gives us this opportunity to, as He offers His love to us, to decide whether we want to freely respond and embrace that love. And then in the afterlife, we know and enjoy Him for all eternity. And I think that's our purpose.
Thank
He
you.
was wanting to run up one more time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Howe, and as well, Dr. Pienaar. Just so far, you really have us, you've captured us with your thoughts, and we would love, as we go into the third part of this dialogue, just that free, engage time. Please, will you open it up for us, Dr. Howe, just by asking some questions, by interacting with Dr. Pienaar, and we'll flow from there for a good few minutes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Pienaar. I wonder your thoughts about my original syllogism. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. And just so that my question is clear, the scientific evidence that I at least alluded to was not an attempt to prove God. It was an attempt to prove that first premise of an argument for God, or at least for a cause of the universe. So since the argument is formally valid, then do you affirm the conclusion or do you not deny one of the two premises? How would you respond to that argument?
First of all, I just want to say, you like Aristotle?
Yes.
You like him a lot.
Well, I've got some problems with some of them.
Okay, I
Just
just
set
want
me
to,
up for a trap.
Yeah.
I don't like,
I love it when you do that.
yeah.
Aristotle said, men created gods after their own image, not only with regard to their form, but with regards to their mode of life. Okay, any case. To say A equals B, A mean the creator, and B the creation. I see all of science and all of your arguments on B, the creation and how it is and how does it work and how does it tick and everything. But there's a jump every time in the argument to A. There's a God. That I don't see. And that's my problem with science also.
But my argument was that there was a cause of the universe, not that there was a God.
Okay, there's a cause. But what proof do you have that that cause was made by something, I think you said outside of us? A cause has to be caused by something outside of us.
Law
Why?
of existence.
It is?
The cause of a thing's existence has to be out. You couldn't exist before you exist. That's what I was trying to get at.
Okay, let's say that is true. Who then created God? If your logic is something has to have created it, whatever we've got, and that is your God, then let's take the logic. Who created God? And who said He only created one other God? Where does it stop?
Okay, a couple of things are out on the table that I think could perhaps be very productive between us. Because the argument as I originally gave it is arguing a little bit weaker claim that there's a cause of the universe. But if there is a cause of the universe, and which means it's the cause of time, space, and matter, then it's not temporal, spatial, or material. So you've got a non-spatial, immaterial, spaceless, atemporal cause, then that starts to inch a little bit closer to what historically theists have understood to be the transcendent God, because He's not material, He's not spatial, He's not temporal. So it's an extrapolation from just unpacking what would minimally a cause of a time-space dimension temporal universe have to be. It couldn't be any of those since it's the cause of all these things.
My biggest problem with Thomas Aquinas is that he...
All right, now watch out now.
I think he did. Yeah, I think he duped us by saying, by looking at what we've got, understanding that there's good and bad, we can now project this to the unknown and say, but there's perfect good there, perfect bad. The devil, God. God has got everything humans have, God has it perfect, have it perfect. How does he know? It's the unknown. Thomas Aquinas even said at someplace, all men know this. No, maybe in the medieval times, but no, all men don't know this. So how do you get to that jump? That's my problem with theism, the theist understanding of God. How do you get to that human God living just above the clouds?
Can I come back, or you want to steer it in a different direction?
I do want to just say something with regards to Dr. Pienaar mentioned earlier about the energy that can neither be created nor destroyed, and I just want to know, just with regards to the argument, according to you, is that energy compatible? Could you come up and talk about that as the cause, and why or why not? Because I think it jumps on what he's saying, to say you're doing the jump from the cause to be more specific, and what justifies that jump? Is it compatible with the energy, and how do you justify moving to the person?
Right, yeah. No, the short answer is I don't think it is compatible. And just for the record, the argument, as I was formulating it, the first one, is explicitly not Aquinas. So he wouldn't agree with the argument I'm giving, because he explicitly rejects this idea. Or let me start from a different direction. Aquinas' argument, which was the second one I gave, is absolutely indifferent as to whether the universe ever began or not. Okay, so those are historically two different. The first one was the Kalam, which would be more medieval Islam, Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, and others. But no, I don't think that the energy thing works, because we can still talk about whether the energy does or doesn't exist. It's not univocal with existence itself. Interestingly, you don't have a robust understanding, or I should say, you don't have a robust doctrine philosophically of existence until Aquinas. You have the sort of nascent, undeveloped forms in Pseudo-Dionysius, but it doesn't really get unpacked until it seemingly just explodes full form in Aquinas' metaphysics. And what I think he was able to show us is that existence is a unique philosophical category. It is that act by which a thing, in essence, is made real. So you could even ask about the energy, whether it exists or not. Now, and so that makes me go, well, then the existence of the energy makes it mean the energy and the existence can't possibly be the same thing.
My problem with philosophy in that sense, and I love philosophy.
How about philosophers?
That's a different story. Is the problem the loose way they use evidence and facts, and even the scientific language, like you also do, and sometimes I'm also guilty of that. But now I know that you, for example, we are talking about the Big Bang and a finite time something started, a singularity. Now I know you're a young Earth creationist. You believe that Earth,
Wednesday and Fridays, I think.
yeah. You believe that Earth is between 6,000 to 10,000 years old.
Yes.
Okay. Now I've got a problem with that, because in that you deny all the scientific facts in front of you. So you do use that scientific jargon, and you even use that to use an example to say somewhere something started, like say the Big Bang, but then you deny all the evidence up to that. So we are back with the God of the gaps. Firstly, God was just hiding above the clouds somewhere. Now he's hiding behind the Big Bang, or just in front of the Big Bang. But on top of that, then you come in and say, no. That's actually rubbish. 6,000 years, 10,000 years, everything started with a flood or whatever. And thereby, you can't sit here and say you're using science. You can't, because 99.9% of all of science will differ from you. So we have to clear the table and say, okay, you don't like that, and you're going to push that away. And then we can start philosophizing about God, or making ideas up or whatever. So that's my problem here, is I don't know how to engage with you, because for me, science isn't God. I hate it when people try to put evolution in the place of God, where other people will say, no, Big Daddy created the Big Bang. I don't like that either way. But the problem is we have to engage on an open table, and you're using science. But you don't believe in any of that. So, what do you say to that? Because that's my problem.
Yeah, no, that's good. Notice, however, that the question of the age of the earth is absolutely irrelevant to the question of whether God's a human invention or not. It has nothing to do with that. Even among most of the Christians that I run around don't agree with me about that. I'm not a scientist, so I probably couldn't referee the debate over the age of the earth. But that's absolutely irrelevant to the question that we're discussing. It doesn't matter whether the earth began 5 minutes ago, or it began 5 billion years, or 19.8, or whatever the standard view is today. It has nothing to do with whether God exists or whether God is a human invention. So I'm happy to decide that, okay, maybe the earth isn't as young as I think it is. That's fine. So now we can get back to the discussion at hand as to whether the thing that, though, however, you asked a very important question, important in the sense that it gets asked a lot in this regard, and that is, well, then, who created God? And I think one of the weaknesses of the argument, the first argument I gave, whatever begins to exist has a cause, the universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. And then we start trying to unpack, well, what's the nature of that cause? It has to be timeless spaces because he creates time, space, and matter. And there are further arguments that bolster it, says it has to be personal, and on and on and on. One of the weaknesses, I think, of that argument can be this very question that you asked. Well, then, if that's all true, where did this being come from? That's why I gave the second argument, the contingency argument. Because the conclusion of that argument is that there is a being who is substantial existence itself. Or another way to say it is, there is an uncreated creator. That's the conclusion. It may be a conclusion people would object to, but I'm saying that's the conclusion. There is an uncreated creator. So it's incoherent for somebody to say, okay, well, who created the uncreated creator? Well, nobody created an uncreated creator. Nobody causes the existence of substantial existence itself. Or maybe another way to say it is, creation has existence. God is existence. So these questions about, well, where did God come from? These are they're incoherent. Something has to have substantial existence, otherwise nothing would exist. It's like having an infinite number of boxcars going by you in your vision. Well, even though you can say, well, why is that boxcar moving? Because this boxcar is pulling it. What about this one? Because this boxcar is pulling it. You could go all the way down, but you couldn't have an infinite number of boxcars. Otherwise, none of them would be moving. Because it's not of the nature of a boxcar and a train. You guys call them boxcars? Okay, it's kind of a dumb time to ask, wasn't it? 99% through the argument going, there's nothing about the nature of a boxcar that moves. It has a locomotive that makes it move. Or a better example are gears. Suppose you see all these interlocking gears and they're all turning. You can't have an infinite number of gears, or otherwise none of the gears would be turning. There has to be something turning the gears. So if we are existing and we don't exist by our essence, which is clearly true, it's not by virtue of being human that I exist, then there must be something that is causing me to exist whose very essence is existence itself. And that's what Aquinas said, all men know this to be God. And I think that's a fair criticism. Not all men do know this to be God in the 21st century. But I think all philosophers in Aquinas' day certainly did know that to be God.
I think all that I put on the table is very much a question to say or to ask, but you are here saying there is a God, and a specific God, and you know how he looks, you know what he thinks, and you know what his will is for everyone. Okay. So now I come and I say, but you use a lot of stuff and a lot of words and a lot of theories that's outside of your discipline, but you don't agree with that discipline. Now, the burden of proof lies with you, not with me. Again, with the topology. If I claim that there is a topology loose in Stellenbosch. The burden of proof lies with me, not with you. I have to bring evidence. I have to show, because if the burden of proof shifts to you, it could be impossible for you. So what you are saying now is there's a locomotive with boxcars, and the boxcars are moving, and they can't be moving to infinite. There has to be a locomotive. There has to be a machine. Okay? Who created the machine? Because this is old physics. This is mechanical physics. The clockmaker. Yeah, of course it's an analogy. Everything is an analogy. If you talk about God, you can't never say this is God. It's always a metaphor. So who made the locomotive? We have to, you say no, it's substance in itself, and it's, where? What proof do you have? That's still my question. There's no proof.
May I just, we've got a few minutes remaining this time, and I did want to just spiral us into focus again on the topic, God, human invention or not. And I think that, I would like to just put this question out again, because Dr. Pienaar, you did make a statement that you are an agnostic, that you've surveyed the evidence and you come to the conclusion that God is unknowable, infinitely so. Then you use certain descriptions like energy. I wasn't clear, and I just think for the sake of us, just to be clear, is the word you're using for God energy? And in that sense, would you still classify as an agnostic, or would you say you've surveyed other evidence that's led you to believe and make a positive affirmation of God as that energy? In that sense, there is a description of God in that sense. While you think about the answer, maybe just say, have you brought, Dr. Howe, the evidence or proof or the arguments to say God is more than just a figment or a notion that humans have invented to try and understand human history, or just a byproduct of human evolution, as already been alluded by Dr. Pienaar. Dr. Pienaar, you may.
No, again, I don't believe in that A equals or X equals Y. So no, if I put energy in front of existence, I'm busy with the same fallacy of creating a God of the gaps. I'm saying, okay, now for him it's a theistic God, for others it's that, for me it's energy. No. Energy is natural. That's what we can measure, we can see. I can say, like, I love life, therefore I feel energy, I can measure it, people can tell me about it. That's on creation. There's nothing to say it is God. So for me, it's the mystery. If you want to give God a name, it's the mystery. It's a mystery, totally. And to give that mystery any name, I think, is to dispel or try to opt for a supernatural cause. And that's my problem. Why do we want to explain natural things? Things we have to struggle with every day, getting people you love getting cancer, or our country with all its problems, and then try to explain it by something we understand even less, a supernatural God. Because tonight, Richard represents that part that says he knows God. He's got proof of God. He knows exactly who he is, or she is. I say, please show me. I want to believe in that. If you've got it, I want to believe. I say you can't. There's nothing. That's why I like Eastern philosophy so much. I like Zen Buddhism. Because they don't work with a God view. There's no God view in there. They just ask, how can you live life deeply now?
Well, I don't think I know what God looks like or necessarily what he thinks or what his will is, just simply. Although I would try to advance arguments about what I think the answers to those questions are in a teased out presentation or conversation that would begin to include my Christian faith. But my Christian faith is a subset of my theism, my belief in God. I think that what we can have a robust conversation about is the existence and nature of God, irrespective of the more specific questions about Christianity. And so it's the more specific subset of Christianity that begins to address these. Do we think we know what God thinks and what His will is? So I don't want to sound like I think all those questions are answered merely at the level of arguments for God's existence. And the question I think before us is a question of what is it reasonable to believe? No, there's no proof. If by proof you mean once you hear it, everybody agrees with the conclusion. What it is a demonstration. This is what the medieval scholastics would call it. That is, you give arguments that are formulated from premises for which you have arguments and evidence for the individual premises. So I tried to marshal two lines of evidence. One, that the universe began, which that seems to be the consensus among astronomers, that it began a finite time ago. And inflationary theory and multiverses and these kind of things are irrelevant to that question, because even those models eventually have an absolute beginning. So if it has a beginning, then either you have to repudiate causality altogether, which then evacuates science of any relevance, or you say, well, if it had a beginning, it had a cause. If it has a cause, it is at least atemporal, aspatial, and amaterial. That begins to sound like what we mean by God. And so then we have to go tease that out a little bit more. So it's not a God of the gaps. It's like the difference between this. Suppose a investigator, detective, is investigating a suspicious fire. And it looks like that the homeowner took out an exorbitant fire insurance policy just the day before the fire. And they find partially burned incendiary soaked rags near the source of the fire. And they find matchbook with some of the matches burned as if it had ignited the fire, and fingerprints on it, and they can identify and then he comes along and says, it looks like arson. Well, it wouldn't make sense for somebody to go, well, no, I think you were committing an arson of the gaps fallacy, because I think the fire just started naturally. It's not that the detective doesn't have an explanation for the fire, so he invents an arson. It's that he has evidence for the arson. So I'm not doing a God of the gaps as if there are things I can't explain, and so I insert God as the explanation. I'm trying to give evidence that I think actually points to the fact that there's a cause of the universe that's anterior to the universe itself.
I just want to say, there's my problem again. A house that is burning. Okay. You've got partial fingerprints, you had evidence. You said partial rags, matchbook, partially fingerprints, everything. That is evidence. That sounds like scientific evidence. None of that, and I know it's a metaphor for something else, but none of that you gave to us about God. That house burning, you gave evidence on it. I would believe there's an arsonist with that evidence. But when you talk about God, there's nothing. There's no fingerprint. You can't tell me how God did this. And that it is relevant if you say the earth is only 6 to 10,000 years old. It is relevant of existence of God, because then you'll have to see some places where God is actually caught in the act, making stuff or doing things. I mean, it's a short time. We've got pottery made by humans older than 10,000 years. So it is relevant. How do you think everything came to be? Describe it, because there's no evidence of a fingerprint. There's no arsonist. That's scientific evidence.
Is there evidence that the universe began to exist a finite time ago?
I think so. If you cross-validate
does that beginning have a cause or not?
I think so. At the theories we've got at this stage.
That's all my first argument. Then there's a cause of the universe.
No. There's the jump. Yes, it started
formally valid argument. Everything that begins to exist as a cause, the universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause.
Okay, my problem is, who caused the cause?
That's fine. But before we jump down to subsequent problems, I was just trying to make sure whether we did or didn't have solidarity on just the minimal syllogism itself.
Of course.
Okay, so you do agree there's a cause of the universe then?
Why not?
Okay, well, now we're getting somewhere, I think. Because what I'm suggesting is, if it's a cause of the universe, it's not material, spatial, or temporal, because it's the cause of those things. It can't cause itself, so it must be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. Now, isn't that interesting that there's a spaceless, timeless, immaterial? It has to be incredibly powerful to cause the universe. I wouldn't try that before breakfast in the mornings. Just leave that up to the professional. But don't you think that's impressive? that there is some existence that is the cause of the universe.
And you say that is God.
No, not yet I don't. I'm just saying, don't you think that's impressive? At least that. Whether we call it, whatever we want to call it, isn't that compelling right there?
Didn't I say the mystery? That is part of the mystery to me? That it's unknowable?
But it's not completely unknowable because you know it caused the universe. That's known because you just admitted that.
I know the universe started somewhere.
And
But
then
who
it had a
caused
cause.
it?
I know, that's fine. I'm not pressing you beyond what I thought you were saying. I thought I heard you say that you agreed the universe began and you agreed it had a cause.
Oh, I can see it.
So that part's
It's
not a
provable.
mystery then. That's not a mystery. You know that at least. That's all I was just making sure I understood you. Okay.
Okay. No, I still don't get it. I think I'm South African and I'm very dumb if it comes to philosophy in the bigger sense of things because I can't, by the sense of me, understand how do you get to that jump that God is the cause of all of this? Just prove it to me. Just give me some proof. Not philosophy, not some construct. Just tell me, this is where it happens. Here we've got all the evidence. Because all I have in front of me is what science showed me. By that, I don't say science can prove God or disprove God. No, they can't. They don't. Hopefully, most of them don't even try that. They know they can't. It's not their mandate. That's my problem. Everything else you told us, I understand that. That's quite natural. It's logic. It's even provable. The mystery, what I'm referring to, is as an agnostic, is to the divine.
Thank you very much to both of you. Could you please give them a round of applause? Thank you again. I can see as you are engaging in this discussion, everybody's at the edge of their seats. I'm not sure if the Stellenbosch pushing them, which you still have to answer for me, at least, Dr. Pienaar. Maybe that's what we'll talk about next week. Is the Togolosh a human invention or not? But thank you. That concludes that session. Now it's time for us to be participants, not just the audience. And so we're going to move on to a time of Q&A. And I'm just going to ask that you please, as you've already seen, we've got really two able speakers and thinkers. And so as you phrase your questions, could you please try and keep them to a maximum of 30 seconds. They'll both be able to deduce the context. Sometimes I know we like to say, you know, from my opinion and point of view, where I stand, this is what I think. There's no need to do that. Please feel free to ask your questions. We'll start with maybe a question to you, Dr. Howe. Do we only have one? Are we using? Oh, we do have two. Okay. So if you have a question, I'm going to ask you to do something, to get out of your seat, and please could you come and stand in line. If you have a question for Dr. Howe, please come and stand on my left side. Queue up on the side. If you have a question for Dr. Pienaar, would you come and please queue on my right. Again, I just want to stress this. Please will you try and keep your question, make your questions brief, because we will have both speakers answer, or at least one answer and a quick response by the conversation partner. I'll start with questions for Dr.
Hi, my question is actually for the both of you. I hope that is fine.
This mic right here. Oh, no, I'm just kidding.
So, which of all the arguments that you've heard, that is arguments that argue against your personal position, best argues against your stance, that is, which of those arguments make you doubt your position the most?
You mean which of the arguments that Abel gave me that makes me doubt?
Just in general.
Oh, sorry.
Just in general.
Just in general. Oh.
Yeah.
I've often thought about this because it's very common for theists to ask atheists, well, what would you count as evidence for God? And what would make you believe in God? So I thought it would only be fair as a theist to have to answer the same question. What would make you doubt the existence of God? And I think intellectually what would make me doubt the existence of God is if I began to, and people do this, in fact, if I began to doubt, in some sense, the validity of logic's ability to apply to reality, that there was this sort of ineffable dimension that was the dominant way in which we understood reality, and that logic somehow didn't service us well, then I would begin to reconsider intellectually whether there was the cause of the universe, because most of those things are the summation of a logical sequence of premises that entail a conclusion. So that would be one of the things that would cause me to reconsider, is if I thought reality at its core really wasn't logical.
For me, it will be, in my life I've met a few people that's really, let's call it holy. And Buddhists call it Vachivatas, sacred people, people that is living in such a way that, oh man, it blows your mind that people can go there. And of course my mother, she really believes in Jesus, blonde hair, blue eyes. And my mother is really a saint. She lives her life. And that usually gets me to the abyss of, maybe I should just forget all this and jump and say there's a God, a theistic God in that sense. But that's the closest I think I get to it at this stage.
My question is to Dr. Pienaar this evening. I see that you're intrigued with trying to search for evidence for the existence of God, that you would be compelled if someone was presented. So I'd be interested to see what you think of this question. In every instance when we discover information, whether it's in a letter or anything else, we infer that there's a mind behind information. Since in biology we now know that there's an information system within biological structures, would that not present some kind of argument for the existence of a mind behind the universe? Because humans don't explain that information system. So I'm just interested what you would make of that as evidence for the existence of something with an intelligence or a mind.
I like the word intelligence. You know what I love? I said it already. Buddhists, when Buddha were dying, they asked him if he was coming back, reincarnation. And he started laughing and said, no, I'm a human being, I'm dying now. The Eastern philosophy understands something the Western philosophy doesn't. And that is that intelligence you are talking about. But for them, it is not a being. It's not necessarily a person. It's something more. And that's what I love about Taoism, the Tao of the Jing, that talks about this energy, that talks about this force, this intelligence. But it's impersonal, or whatever, what's the correct English word? It's not impersonal. Impersonal, yeah. So yeah, that intelligence do grab me, but why God? Especially a theistic God.
Yeah, I actually think that this is a really strong argument for intelligence as the cause of intelligent coding. If you got code, you got a coder. If you've got design, you've got a designer. And as the questioner said, everywhere else we encounter information, we always attribute that being caused by a conscious mind of some sort. So if we've got information in DNA throughout all living systems on Earth, unless there's some compelling reason to all of a sudden preempt our experience and say, well, in this one instance, it just occurs through random mutation and natural selection, then I think that the really more intellectually integrated response to make is that that must have somehow come from some kind of intelligence that's anterior to all of these living systems on Earth.
A very simple question. Do both of you think there's empirical proof of an afterlife, whether it's reincarnation or heaven and hell?
my tendency is to say no. Although I think a lot of Christians would probably disagree with it. I'm not an expert on this, but near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences, and for most of my life, I was waiting for a near-body experience. That's what I want. Anyway, but I tend to discount those. So my convictions about the afterlife are derived from Christian faith. Are derived from my Christian faith, which is a subset and includes, I think, issues of special revelation from God through Scripture and through Jesus. So my tendency, but I could be wrong about that.
I would say no. Sigmund Freud said, that is the birthplace of religion. We are so afraid of dying. And when we started exchanging our ideas about life ending, and we all know the ego inside of us that wants to keep on living, we had to design some afterlife. But there's no proof. Just like there's no proof of God.
Evening, Dr. Pienaar. When we say God is transcendental and is outside of time, we're talking about that he has a special property that is outside of time. So evidence for his being would be evidence that shows that he's outside of time, and this is, if you look at biblical prophecy, he actually declares future events before they happen. And this is a property that's unique to him, that only he can do. So if you look at the Bible, there's evidence where 200 years before the king of Persia came into reign, King Cyrus, the prophet Isaiah predicted this to the T. So that would be evidence of this property. How do you explain this?
Okay, this is a topic all on its own. Biblical, you throw around scientific language again by saying biblical evidence as if it's empirical, testable, verifiable, repeatable evidence. And prophecy, words I don't like, because it's outside of the domain of, I think, a thinking person. There's 3,000 gods in existence today. Religions that believe that there's God. And their prophecies, most of them are said to be been true. And, it's so arrogant of Christians. 2,500 years. That's the age of Christianity. 1,800 is Islam. Hinduism is 6,000 and more years old. Buddhism is 4,000 years old. Judaism, 3,000. So the two young teenagers, Christianity and Islam, is the ones claiming the most. Maybe we should listen to the prophecies of the Hindus again, because they're much, much older than us. There's even gods, mythical gods, Dionysus, for example, that precedes Jesus, and Jesus is the exact copy of him, but he's older than Jesus, so his story was first. Jesus is actually a Jewish copy of Dionysus. He also died for his people on the cross. He also made water into wine. So my problem is here that you go from the uitgangspunt that the Bible is God's word, it's true, and it can be proven. No, it's not. For a lot of people in this world, the Bible is not the final proof. So that's my problem with your statement. It's not that I don't believe you're sincere and that you really think that's true. And it's okay, because most of you here are Christians, you are born Christians, your parents are Christians. But that doesn't conclude as evidence, not in my book.
I've never thought about the concept of fulfilled prophecy as an argument for God's existence as such. I think, so I'd have to kind of chew on that a while to see whether I would be favorable for that. But in the context, these kinds of appeals to fulfill prophecies were more an opportunity for the Hebrew prophets to adjudicate between competing gods. Not so much that there is or isn't a God, most everyone affirmed it in the Old Testament period. So it was a matter of whether Baal or Semiramis or whomever it was, or Yahweh was the true God, and that was where the appeal to prophecy generally came in to adjudicate that.
Thank you, doctors. I'd like to get back to the original question. For that reason, I think it's very, philosophically, I would think that it's very easy to get confused with the question in terms of epistemology and ontology. So therefore, I'd like to ask, if we look at the question again, is God a human invention? Would making the argument that he is not simply be committing the genetic fallacy?
Well, it depends on how you framed it. It didn't, if you said, okay, all right. Sorry. Sorry. In my own little world here. The genetic fallacy is when you illicitly try to discount a position as being true or false based upon some kind of questionable way in which the belief came about. So it's something that Abel had actually alluded to a while ago when he said you're a Christian because your parents raised you that way or something to that effect. Even if that was true, even if the only reason you were a Christian is because your parents raised you that way, that doesn't make it false. It doesn't make Christianity false. Any more than, well, gee, if you'd have been born in the Madeira River in South America, you might believe the Earth is the center of the solar system. But that doesn't mean the Earth, therefore, is the center of the solar system. Or it doesn't mean that somebody, well, the only reason you believe the sun's the center of the solar system is you're born in a Western civilization. That doesn't make it false. So the genetic fallacy is when you illicitly appeal to the origins of a belief. That's where genetic comes. The origins of a belief is if that somehow discounted the truthfulness of the belief. What's relevant is whether there's evidence for the truth of the belief, irrespective of why I believe it. I may have stupid reasons for believing things that are actually true. Okay, now, I forgot what the question was. About whether it's a genetic fallacy to say God is a human invention.
Yeah.
Depending on how the proposition is framed, it could be the case that humans invented the concept of God and there still be a God. Just like we invent the concept of gravity, and there still is gravity, more or less. But I think in fairness to Dr. Pienaar, what we're trying to contrast here is God merely a human invention? Or is he something more than that exists independent of that? That's what we're intending to discuss. So I don't think the way we're trying to do it, anybody's in danger of committing a genetic fallacy.
I agree.
Okay, Dr. Pienaar. You constantly ask, where's the proof for God? And my question is, would that not take away our freedom of choice to follow God? If we had proof for God, then we would have no choice to believe in God. Belief, by definition, is an acceptance that something exists or is true, especially one without proof. A pivotal point of belief in God is based on faith. Faith despite
proof. I do agree that faith is defined in that sense. But isn't it also true that you, as a Christian, I imagine, do work with proof? You've got your proof for the afterlife. You've got proof for being rewarded as being a good person. So in a sense, yeah, maybe it's true that what you're saying, but you are also working with this reward and punishment effect. You are doing good deeds because you're hoping for reward. Why do you do good deeds?
For the sake of it being good.
Okay, and then we're on the same page. I also do it for that reason. It's nothing to do with faith. Nothing to do with proof or not proof. There's two questions in what you're asking, and the one I'm ignoring. But the one I'm telling you is that, yes, we're on the same page if you say we want to live life deeply, profoundly, simply, with love and respect and compassion. For me, it's nothing to do with God. If He's there or not, I'm going to reward me for that, or whatever. I simply do it because I know this is what I want to do, because I believe morality is inherent. Can I answer you like that? It's okay? Sorry.
Yeah, as I take the question, if I've understood it, I think it's born out of an unfortunate, not in her case necessarily, but I'm thinking more broadly, an unfortunate confusion about how faith and reason relate. And I would argue classically, though not They're not exclusively, but in the classical tradition in Christianity, the difference between faith and reason had the difference between believing something on the basis of demonstration, whatever demonstration looks like. A mathematical claim is demonstrated by the tools and methods of math. Historical claims are demonstrated by the tools and methods of protocol or history. Philosophical claims, philosophical methods and tools and protocols. Aesthetic claims, musical claims, or whatever it is. And so if you come to believe something because you've seen it demonstrated to you, then that is said to believe it by reason. If you come to believe something on the basis of authority, you trust somebody, then that is said to be by faith. So I would submit most of us probably believe what we believe about the speed of light by quote-unquote faith. That is, we believe it on authority. Now, to be sure, reason has a role to play to adjudicate authorities. We don't just believe anybody on the internet as far as what they tell us about the nature of light. But we might have reason to believe that a physicist is a competent authority about this. So some Christians, or some people, but Christians in my case, might believe in God because they accept it by faith. They just take it on God's own authority that He's there and that He's speaking to them. Other Christians, other theists might believe in God because they think it can be philosophically demonstrated, not scientifically, because science doesn't prove God. Science proves some of the premises in a philosophical argument for God.
For the sake of time, we can only take 2 more questions from each side. Your questions.
Dr. Howe, with regards to your initial cosmological argument for that there needs to be a first cause, why not the possibility of infinite regression, which you mentioned in the beginning that you wanted to get to now? Why not the possibility that, then it doesn't need to be a cause to begin with? And secondly, how do you feel about Bertrand Russell's idea that existence, our existence, and the universe can simply be a brute fact?
Can I answer both questions? Okay. All right. Well, I think the argument from contingency, I already addressed the issue of infinite regress. But I take your question to be more, what about an infinite regress with respect to the first argument? The cosmological argument, by the way, is an argument for God's existence based upon the existence of the universe, or the cosmos, the Greek word for world. And so there what I would appeal to are really 2 lines of evidence, one of which I gave, namely that all of the scientific evidence that we have is that everything in the universe that we see, hear, taste, touch, or smell had an absolute beginning, a finite time ago. So there just isn't anything before that physically. Philosophically, I think the arguments that comprise what are known as the Kalam cosmological argument have to do with the nature of transfinite math and infinite set theory, Cantorian set theory, for example. So I've been convinced, I did my master's thesis on this argument, I've been convinced that it can be demonstrated mathematically that the past cannot be infinite temporally. Now, the details of that are obviously way beyond our time constraints, but that's how I would do it. And so I would commend to your reading William Lane Craig's book, The Kalam, K-A-L-A-M, The Kalam Cosmological Argument. If you're interested in infinite set theory, transfinite math, and Cantorian math, and these things, then you need therapy, basically. If you are. But nevertheless, if you're still interested in it, then I highly recommend Kalam Cosmological Argument by William Lane Craig.
For me, it's about measurement and the possibility of measuring what is in front of the Big Bang. Give science still a few years. If you can't measure something, you can't say anything, and that's what I love about science. They won't play outside of the rules and say they can. They'll just say, okay, we don't know. But we throw around words like nothingness, as if nothingness is nothing. Really? Let's see what's going to happen when we discover a lot of things we don't have the tools yet to measure. And that's my problem with theories like the Big Bang was the start, and before that the infinite nothingness. We can't measure that yet, so let's give science a chance there. They're not arrogant in claiming they know. They will be the first ones to say, we can't measure it, so let's stop there. But to put in there, and again I say it, because that's the theme of tonight, God, I think, no.
Hallo, ek sukkel so 'n bietjie in Engels na 8, maar ek probeer. So, Dr. Pienaar, I think you've been using a standard of knowing that is so high that anybody will not be able to pass on your standard of knowing, and you're not doing that the same with your own readers. So I'll make the point like this. So you're saying evidence is testable, repeatable, measurable, refinable. Do you believe in history? It's not repeatable, it's not measurable. So do you believe in persons or history or anything like that? So it seems to me that you're going to have to give up a lot of things that you obviously want to believe in to hold your standard of evidence, which seems too high for this debate.
It's interesting your statement of history, because we work there with the most probable outcome. And if you say a person can't be, I see you.
No, the thing is, you've set your standard of knowing, repeatable, testable.
Yes.
But now you're bringing probable in. You didn't bring it in.
Yeah, because it's not part of it, because history, and I've got a problem mostly with history, especially Christian history. So I will bring back that definition you just gave, I will use for history. But I don't understand your question, because I'm working with nature, I'm working with the natural. That's what it means to test, verify, and be able to see, to communicate. That's what science is about. Sorry.
No worries. I was having a great time listening. Well, so I'll make this really, really short. I do believe that the sort of what is known as logical positivism, this idea that all knowledge is ultimately reducible to these physical kind of categories, has been shown to be, and to my satisfaction, just absolutely bankrupt as a philosophy. Not that Dr. Pienaar is bankrupt, I just mean that methodology. Because when we start talking things like universals, you can't measure a universal. Universal would be something like this. Suppose I said, I have a tree in my backyard in Atlanta, Georgia. You instantly know what I mean. I didn't say whether it was an evergreen or deciduous. I didn't say whether it was a sapling or a towering oak. I didn't say whether it was sickly or healthy. I didn't say whether it was fruit-bearing or nothing. I gave no particulars about it, yet you knew exactly what I meant by the word tree, because that's a universal in the intellect that you're able to extract from all of your particular instances of tree. This is Aristotle again, by the way. I'm weaseling him back in. And so I would submit there's a lot of these metaphysical elements of human knowledge that the intellect is able to extract from our experience of physical realities. But those intellectual, metaphysical truths are not themselves just physical realities.
Dr. Howe, I'd like to ask a question, appeal to your conscience, to just ask, you seem to be appealing to a lot of human experiences and human conditions, but I think if there was a non-human person in this room, they could answer the question of whether we humans created God or not, but unfortunately there isn't. So what test do you use to question that statement that we're debating today? Because appealing to human experiences is appealing to the same prejudices and the same human condition that resulted in the creation in the first place. So I'm thinking, if there's a test that you have, or that you're proposing that we could use to validate this claim and prove that there is a God that doesn't depend on humans.
Yes. This is a very interesting question, and I'll have to plead guilty. Everything I do is human, because I'm a human being. It's by definition impossible for me as a human to give you something that's non-human as part of my argument, because I am human. Because even if it originated in something non-human, as it sifted through my faculties and I say it out, it just becomes part of my humanity. So I fully embrace the fact that I think all knowledge, even knowledge about God, mathematics, logic, and morality, arise initially out of our experience of the physical world. And that the intellect is able to understand things that the senses don't know how to interpret. Metaphysical truths, moral truths, logical truths, and theological truths. And this tradition, this Aristotelian Thomistic tradition, I think is a very robust thing. So I agree there's a lot of things actually that Dr. Pienaar has said tonight that we didn't have the occasion, or I didn't have the occasion to actually tell you. I think that's right. I do think humans have invented many gods. I do think there is a sense in which God is ineffable and is beyond language and is beyond our capacity to grasp. So I think the best we can do is extrapolate from the effects to the cause. But I think that extrapolation is in effect overwhelmingly compelling to me as I see and experience the physical world and know there must be some cause who is substantial existence, who's eternal, self-existent. And then, of course, if we go in the next debate, we can get into the Christian stuff, the Christian history, and see, has God actually invaded history and communicated to us? And I would say that he has through Jesus, but that would be the topic of the next debate. Dialogue.
I'm just going to read a quote from Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Isn't it enough to see that a garden is beautiful without having to believe that there are fairies at the bottom of it too?
I see that I'm the most down-to-earth person here, literally. Dr. Pienaar, I'd just like to ask you a question. You said that when the debate was going on, you asked for evidence, proof. Can you prove this to me? Can you? Is there a fingerprint? And then you went on to saying that you believe in energy and energy takes on a different form. Just I want to ask, can you prove to me of energy? Like, can you prove energy? Can you give me a fingerprint of energy and of it taking a different form? When you said we die or we take on a different form, can you prove that to me?
Yes. There's, you know, physicists and all their experiments and everything they do, so yes. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please join me in congratulating our two speakers and this evening. I guess you'll agree with me that regardless of where you stand on this, maybe you even have a different idea than position that you've adopted or you came in with, but that we can appreciate the level at which we've been engaged in this very important topic. And I want to extend that again, just a gratitude to you for being the most amazing audience as well. So we give yourself a round of applause for that. And again, to our two brilliant speakers and thinkers, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the hard work that you've put into this. And we look forward to having you back here to discuss the Dogoloshi issue.
Yeah. We prefer not to talk about the Dogoloshi. What happens in South Africa stays here. Yeah. I think you touched on a lot of what I wanted to say, so thank you very much for that. Really wonderful having such an incredible audience, so thank you. I'm so sorry we couldn't get to all those questions, obviously we're time limited. To the guys watching, we have about, I think 71 people streaming in on the live stream. At one point we had 79, I thought we'd hit 80, but then you started talking about Tukoloshis and then we dropped back down to 65. So, bottom line is we had almost a third of our audience here tonight was around the world. So thank you to all of those, and apologies we couldn't get to your questions. We'll do that next time. Thank you, gentlemen. It takes a lot to come and sit in front of a crowd of people and boldly state what you believe, and we appreciate and applaud that. I do, if you'll humor me for just a second, want to thank just a few people quickly for tonight. It's very important. Of course, our speakers, Dr. Richard Howe, traveling from North Carolina, USA, and Dr. Abel Pienaar from Pretoria, just as far. And our wonderful moderator, Mr. Mashua, Mkhlas Mashua, for your help this evening, your advice, and for, of course, being such a great moderator. Thank you very much. Simon Brace, who has arranged the whole trip to South Africa. Simon, thank you. You made it possible and has made sure that Abel arrives at the right place at the right time. Tiaan Kutsia, Eric Lewis, Sir Ross Hofmeyer for their efforts and arrangements in order to find a suitable venue for this event. Mariette Loubser for the booking of the venue, initial arrangements for the event, as well as the marketing on campus. A lot goes into an event like this, so please humor me. Johan Verster, Vinesh Williams, and the rest of the shofar team for handling the sound, the tickets at the door, and all the other logistics and specific efforts during the last week and on the evening itself. That's those guys over there. Thank you so much. Udo Carsten for the help with the structure of the evening. help with the preparation of the questions and his great advice, to Johanny Rasmus for his contacts at Stellenbosch and his advice, Peter Fourie for the recording of the event, Peter's the guy at the back there, as well as the other events during the week, Janno Straden for development of the excellent posters for the various events, Angela from Bloberg Manor Hotel for sponsoring the accommodation for Richard and his crew for the week, Christy Smith for his help with this event from the start, his marketing efforts, car hire costs that is in South Africa. Accommodation for Richard and his team during the week, and his advice and overall support. And then something here about Nico Panaggio, we won't thank him, he's just, for everyone that has been praying non-stop for this event, or sending positive vibes. The Antwerp-Bediening, Ratio Christi Stellenbosch, Shofar Christian Church and Amplified NG Kerk Cambridge, NG Kerk Bloberg Stand, Gereformeerde Kerk Stellenbosch and GS2. Thanks to everyone else that's helped to spread the word and market this event. Thank you to all these sponsors of this event. So forgive me for going on, I have to, and I want to thank all of you for being here today. I just want to end with saying this is just a scratch on the surface. If you're new to apologetics, this is just a very tiny minuscule scratch on the surface. I hope this is ignited if you're new to this, and if you're not, then you know a lot of what has been spoken of over here is just a tiny window into this vast amount of information out there for both sides of the argument. So thank you to everyone for coming, and I'm going to ask Simon Brace to just come to the front and just tell us a little bit about Ratio Christi, if you don't mind. Simon, if you don't mind taking a seat over there for our streaming audience.
Right, my privilege to be back here. I've been out of the country for 20 years, and so my accent has probably changed a bit, so I probably speak like a Yank now, but hopefully that won't discourage you. But one of the things that I'm going to be involved with is a campus ministry called Ratio Christi. It's a campus ministry which focuses on discipleship amongst Christian students on campus. One of the most lamentable things going on in our culture is unfortunately the atrophy of the Christian mind, particularly on university campuses where Christians aren't able to give a reason for the hope that is within them. And often when confronted with skeptical questions or questions that challenge our faith, we don't do a good job of giving reasons for why we believe what we believe. And so we often punt to these very subjective, emotional arguments. Ratio Christi exists as a ministry to move Jesus beyond strumming guitars and eating pizza once a week, which is unfortunately what a lot of campus ministries have been reduced to. And so we're trying to inject some intellectual credibility into the lives of Christians on campus so that when we go out in an arena like the university, which is a melting pot of ideas, that we're more competent in terms of giving reasons for why we believe what we believe, and so that we can have productive conversations with men like Dr. Pienaar and others. If you're a student here at Stellenbosch or you're from somewhere else and you're interested in this ministry and you're interested in getting involved in that kind of work, we do have a sign-up sheet which will be where? At the back there on the left-hand side, because we're interested in connecting with Christian students on campus and also faculty and staff who might be believers who might be interested in this work as well. The ministry started about 4 years ago in the United States. It now exists at 200 universities in the United States, and there's now a desire to see that ministry expand overseas. So if that's of interest to you, then I'd like to chat to you at the back there. Thank you very much.
And as you close, sorry,
I'm
just going to ask just for 1 minute as well. You're involved with a few things as well. I'd like you to please just take 1 minute to tell us just about that.
It's going to be less than a minute, but I've got the Center for Contemporary Spirituality. In Afrikaans, it's actually in Afrikaans, Eie spiritualiteit. It is to search for answers and to search for a deep life. Respect and compassion in this life. Not the hereafter, but this life. And I've got every month a lot of great writers, people that is not from the Christian community here, but great thinkers, people that challenge you a lot. So please go to www.spirituality.co.za.
Right, there we go. That brings us to the end of this event. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. It's such a privilege and an honor, as I said, to have spent this time with these guys, but also with everyone here. So thank you for taking your time, and I'd like to just greet in how we do in Afrikaans. I will not translate this for you later. Mooi ry, lekker bly en veilig vry. I'll see you all again another day. God bless everybody. Thank you. Testing. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, as you leave, one very important last announcement. It's an emergency thing. This could mean your life. I forgot to thank the person really who's put everything together here. And the reason why I did so is because we worked on the script or on the points in the script and sent me some points of thank yous. And he didn't put his own name on there. Obviously not. Because, I'm not going to say because he's a Christian, but because he's a good man. Rudy de Beer. Rudy, bye, thank you. This is the man, thank you very much. He's the guy that put it all together. Why don't you, Rudy? Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye. For real. Thank you.